Thanks for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm Wendy Griffith. Today, as Israeli airstrikes have pounded Hezbollah weapons and as Israel has taken out much of their leadership, now the United States and other nations are calling for a ceasefire. But many Israeli leaders are saying no. And all of this as Israel prepares for a ground invasion against the terrorist group. Israel has displayed technological genius on the battlefield and promises more advanced tactics to come. We'll hear from one expert who explains the divine source of Israel's creativity. Hurricane Helene approaching the U.S. East Coast as a major Category 4 storm. Governors already declaring a state of emergency. And CBN's Operation Blessing preparing to help families deal with the disaster. And students gathering at their schools across the country to pray at this year's annual See You at the Pole. These stories and much more today on NewsWatch.
This is CBN News Watch.
We begin with Israel's ongoing warfare against Hezbollah as Israeli leaders are pushing back hard against a call for a 21-day ceasefire from a number of nations, including the U.S. As CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, that call comes after an intense bombing campaign by Israel has significantly damaged the Iranian-backed terror group.
President Joe Biden told reporters the call for a ceasefire is backed by several nations.
We're able to generate significant support in Europe as well as the Arab nations who support this war not wide.
The statement by the U.S., France, and others calls for the implementation of a UN resolution established after the 2006 Lebanon war. The resolution forbids the presence of any militias in southern Lebanon, but does not specifically mention Hezbollah. Some reports indicated Israel accepted the ceasefire, but Prime Minister Netanyahu's office issued a statement and said, "This is an American-French proposal that the Prime Minister has not even responded to." The report about the purported directive to ease up on the fighting in the north is the opposite of the truth. The Prime Minister has directed the IDF to continue fighting with full force. Before leaving for the U.S. to address the UN General Assembly on Friday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized why Israel is fighting this war.
We're determined to return our residents in the north safely to their homes. We're inflicting blows on Hezbollah that they did not imagine. We do it with power. We do it with ruse. I promise you one thing, we will not rest until they return home.
Since October 8th, Hezbollah has fired more than 9,000 rockets, missiles, drones, and UAVs into Israel.
This is the reality of Hezbollah's threat on Israel. If this was a home, the entire family would have been killed, which is why Israel is at war until these people can come back home. There's no evidence that Hezbollah has been willingly leaving the border with Israel. Hezbollah's entire raison d'etre is to invade and attack Israel.
While diplomats work for a ceasefire, Israel appears on the verge of a ground invasion. The IDF moved more tanks to the border and called up 2 brigades of reservists. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi told troops they may soon cross into Lebanon.
The goal is very clear, to safely return the residents of the north. To achieve that, we are preparing the process of maneuvering, which means your military boots, your maneuvering boots, will enter enemy territory.
Meanwhile, 2 top Senate Republicans are accusing the Biden administration of holding up weapons and other aid to Israel. A letter from Senator Tom Cotton and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell states, "We write to strongly condemn your administration's continued delay in providing critical military equipment and weapons to our ally Israel in the midst of an existential war." The weapons include Apache attack helicopters and Mk-84 bombs, which can destroy Hezbollah and Hamas assets in deeply buried tunnels.
Chris Mitchell is with us now from our news bureau in Jerusalem. Chris, let's talk more about the weapons controversy in a moment. But first, what more can you tell us about UN Resolution 1701 that the U.S. and other nations want to see implemented in their call for a ceasefire?
Well, Wendy, in August of 2006, after the 34-day Second Lebanon War between Hezbollah, the UN Security Council adopted a resolution called 1701. And in that resolution, it called for a 7-point plan for the government of Lebanon to exercise its authority and sovereignty over southern Lebanon, all the way from what's called the Blue Line, the Lebanese-Israeli border, to the Litani River. And it stated in that resolution that no weapons in that area without the consent of the government of Lebanon would be allowed. It called for the disarmament of all the armed groups in Lebanon. And then it called for a UN force called UNIFIL to have 15,000 troops. They were there, but they have really no mandate to enforce the resolution. And since 2006, that really has been an abysmal failure. What happened, Hezbollah not only didn't leave the area, but its arsenal grew about 10 times. And then since 2006, it's been entrenched in southern Lebanon. So now the ceasefire call by the United States and many of these nations is asking for the implementation of that resolution 1701, that it hasn't been implemented since 2000. Calls into question whether or not they're going to be able to have it implemented now in 2024.
Chris, what's the reaction to this plan from Israeli political and government leaders?
Well, right now, the coalition members are not very happy about it. One of the leaders, the finance minister, Smotrich, he says the war must end with only one scenario: crushing Hezbollah and eliminating its ability to harm the residents of the north. Others have called it a serious mistake unless there's any significant concession from Hezbollah. Some have called it a fatal mistake, and what they must achieve the war goal, which is having all the residents of the north go back to their homes. They want other, I wouldn't call it a dissent, but Yair Lapid, an opposition leader, he said yes to a ceasefire, but only 7 days, not 21 days. I think there's really unanimity from many of these, at least coalition government members, that they don't want to see a ceasefire go into effect, allowing Hezbollah to regroup. Right now, it seems like the IDF really has Hezbollah on a back foot, as some people would say.
Chris, Israel appears to be going ahead with plans for a ground invasion. Do they seem committed to carrying it out?
They do. In fact, Wendy, it seems like they've, as we said in our report, there's 2 brigades, maybe that's 3,000 to maybe as many as 6,000 troops. More tanks are going to the border. And yesterday's statement by Halevi was very clear about having boots on the ground. And that is an official goal of the government, to make sure that these residents can, for the north, can go back. And how can you do that without a ground invasion is what many people are asking. And it's doubtful. Many people believe that Hezbollah would willingly retreat beyond the Litani River and willingly and voluntarily go back and abandon all the infrastructure, military infrastructure that they've been building since 2006.
Back to that military equipment, why are these Republican senators here in the U.S. accusing the Biden administration of holding up key military equipment from Israel or to Israel?
Well, Wendy, they're accusing the Biden administration of really slow-walking Israel's request. For example, the Apache attack helicopters were requested last December, and they've been needed in Gaza against Hamas and also needed in the north against Hezbollah. One other thing they've asked for is what's called a Caterpillar D9 tractor, the huge armored Caterpillar tractors. And what they're used for is to clear IEDs, improvised explosive devices, which would actually save the lives of IDF soldiers. And they're also saying the administration, they're blaming the administration, is calling for Israel, blaming Israel for the escalation. And they're saying that they're undercutting Israel's efforts to really restore deterrence. And on the other hand, emboldening Iranian-backed terrorists like Hezbollah and Hamas.
All right. Well, it looks very windy behind you where you're standing right now in Jerusalem, Chris. We will continue to pray for you and the entire team there. Chris Mitchell, our Middle East Bureau Chief, thanks as always for your insights. Stay safe and know that many people are praying for you and the entire team there. Coming up, the technological genius of Israel on display in its war against terrorists who have been attacking the Jewish state. We'll hear from author and technology expert George Gilder about Israel's advanced capabilities and the source of their creativity when we come back.
Introducing a brand new way to start your morning, the CBN News Quick Start Podcast. Each weekday morning at 7 a.m., get quick highlights of the day's important news. Then an in-depth analysis that goes beyond the headlines. Insights that matter to people of faith. Discover how God is moving around the world and here at home. Find the CBN News Quick Start Podcast on iTunes or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts, because truth matters.
After decimating rocket positions in South Lebanon and eliminating much of Hezbollah's leadership, the Israeli Defense Forces are promising more advanced warfare tactics ahead. On this week's episode of The Global Lane, author and economist George Gilder says Israel's technological genius on the battlefield is a result of creativity in the image of their creator.
Obviously, it was Israel's genius that contrived the contraptions that allowed them to attack specifically the Hezbollah operatives all over southern Lebanon, devoted to destroying Israel and killing the Jews there. I mean, Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, said that he welcomed the creation of Israel because it meant all the Jews would be in one place where they could kill them together and make it easier for them to kill the Jews. And so this is the kind of enemy that Israel faces, and its response is creativity in the image of their creator. They lead the world in missile defense, in microchips, in microchip metrology, and biotech, and all these different areas, and they make possible the dominance of American companies in the world economy. The NVIDIA chips. NVIDIA is now a $3 trillion valuation on good days. And NVIDIA makes the chips behind all these artificial intelligence breakthroughs that are currently resulting in America's stock market, dominating world stock markets. 70% of the market value of companies in the world comes from the United States, and they are companies that are dependent on Israel for their critical path technologies. NVIDIA could not be the chief chip company without its ownership of the Israeli company Mellanox. And the head of Mellanox is E.L. Waldman, lost 2 children in that October 7th attack.
George, the exploding pagers incident shocked the world and Hezbollah. What other advanced warfare surprises do you think may lie ahead? You're familiar with this Israeli technology, so what technology are they most capable?
Well, today, surprisingly enough, China and Russia both have hypersonic missiles, which render obsolete all the missile defenses we have in the United States. Israel is now launching Iron Beam, which zaps hypersonic missiles at the speed of sound with laser beams at the speed of light and bring light to the heathen and missiles in the atmosphere and destroy them. That's an unexpected breakthrough. That iron beam complementing their Iron Dome, and that will benefit the United States and the entire world.
George, you know that Israel has received a lot of criticism around the world for its war in Gaza, and now the war against Hezbollah. So amidst all the political rhetoric and hate, what do you want people to know about Israel and its people?
Well, Israel is really the leader of Western civilization today. It's their new movement of primitive, reactionary, malignant forces, and Israel is combating them. Think of Hitler during the Second World War. Nasrallah distributes copies of Mein Kampf. It's a bestseller in many parts of the Middle East, and it's the inspiration for the attacks on Israel. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want a two-state solution. They want to kill Jews, or many of them are concentrated near Hezbollah, where they can be attacked.
Okay, amazing technology. The book is The Israel Test, How Israel's Genius Enriches and Challenges the World. George Gilder, it's a pleasure discussing this with you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Great interview. Also on this week's episode of The Global Lane, war is also raging beyond the Middle East. We'll bring you a look at the millions of Christians displaced and suffering in sub-Saharan Africa and the issues and policies of greatest concern to Generation Z, as many of them vote for the very first time in a U.S. presidential election. You can see it all on The Global Lane tonight on the CBN News Channel at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Still ahead, here at home, Hurricane Helene heading toward the East Coast. Expected to be a major Category 4 storm, bringing dangerous winds, heavy rains, and flooding. We'll look at how people are getting ready for the impact right after this. Hurricane Helene is moving closer to Florida's Gulf Coast, gaining strength and posing a serious threat to several states. Forecasters warn this storm could bring catastrophic flooding, dangerous winds, and life-threatening storm surge. 4 governors have already declared states of emergency. CBN's Brody Carter has the story.
Forecasters warn the approaching storm could become a devastating Category 4 hurricane with winds up to 130 miles an hour and as much as 2 feet of rain, bringing life-threatening flash floods.
You can hide from the wind, and there will be significant wind on this storm, but you got to run from the water.
20 of Florida's counties are under mandatory evacuations, while the entire state, along with Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, all under a state of emergency. Meanwhile, cities like Fort Lauderdale are getting ready as families prepare for the worst.
Sandbags to prepare for the storm.
State relief efforts are also in motion with thousands of linemen stationed in Tampa, the Big Bend area, anticipating between 10 and 20 feet of coastal flooding. Forecasters call that an unsurvivable storm surge.
If our community remains central in Helene's path as forecasted, we will see unprecedented damage like nothing we have ever experienced before as a community.
CBN's Operation Blessing is already on the ground, strategically positioned in Panama City Beach, ready to bring aid and comfort to victims of the storm.
Operation Blessing has already been in contact with many of our church partners here in the area. We are ready to respond as soon as the storm hits. We will be coming alongside with not only physical help, but also spiritual care.
OB is loaded with chainsaws, shovels, coolers, and other critical supplies to help Florida recover from the anticipated devastation.
Please join us in prayer for all those that are in the path of the storm as well as our team.
Helene is expected to make landfall in the eastern part of Florida's panhandle tonight and swiftly move up into Georgia and other states with heavy wind and rain. Emergency agencies are working across state lines to prep for what could be a widespread multi-state disaster response. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Pray for Florida. Thanks, Brody, for that report. And you can find out more about how Operation Blessing is rushing to help families after Hurricane Helene hits and how you can help by visiting their website at ob.org. Well, coming up, students across the country gathering for the annual See You at the Pole prayer event Wednesday morning before school to pray and seek God. We'll bring you that story when we come back.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Finally today, thousands of students showed up early around the flagpoles on their school campuses across the country Wednesday morning for the annual See You at the Pole. They came to pray for their friends, their schools, communities, and the unsaved. See You at the Pole is a global movement of prayer initiated, organized, led by students, and it takes place on the fourth Wednesday in September. The event's website points out that young people have gathered at their school's flagpoles or other community locations for the last 34 years to, quote, intercede for their leaders, their schools, and families, asking God to bring moral and spiritual awakening to their campuses and countries. And you can find in-depth coverage about Wednesday's events on CBNNews.com. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with CBNNews.com. Also, let us know what you think about the stories that you saw today. You can email us at newswatch@cbn.com or reach out on social media. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day, everyone. God bless you.